And speaking of strange bedfellows, we got two amazing plenary speakers who are joining us tonight. Two men that we haven't seen at SVN conferences before. The first is Colonel Puck Mykleby, and he is a former Navy Top Gun pilot. He's got an extraordinary vision to transform the U.S. national security system, and it's all based on sustainability. We also have Patrick Doherty, who's joining us, Deputy Director and a brilliant strategist at the New America Foundation. And I bet some of you are probably thinking, how long until Jerry Gourdet stands up and starts heckling the Colonel? Well, I'm guessing there won't be any heckling tonight, and it's not just because I've locked Jerry Gourdet in a closet. It's because Puck Mykleby and Patrick Doherty are capturing the hearts and minds of military and government leaders all over this country and all over the world, and that's exactly what we need right now. So please join me in welcoming Colonel Mykleby to SVN.
Thanks. Just one point of order because just gotta say it. That's Marine Corps, not Navy. I'm ready to the door, but I already ate, so I gotta stay. So, yeah, but thanks, Jim. And thanks for having me here. And those are awfully kind words, and must be they're not deserved. So, you know, coming to this organization, first of all, I'm just humble and I'm honored to be here. Because what I was seeing out in the crowd, these are the change makers. I mean, that's what I love hearing those words, the change makers. Because right now today, for whatever given reason, you know, we want to look at who's going to have the answer. Well, there is no stinking answer. You know, so I'm not up here to tell you any answer, the magic silver bullet that's going to fix all things. But I will give you a hell of a lot of questions. And oh, by the way, I forgot. This is also my disclaimer. I used to have to. This is kind of cool. I graduated. I retired from the Marine Corps 1st of August. And before that, Wayne Porter and I, we wrote the National Strategic Narrative. We'd have to come up here and do a disclaimer that they were just our ideas. Well, now I can say, yeah, they're my stinking ideas, and I'm glad to say it. And by the way, my wife always tells me before I do these things, don't drop the F-bomb. What's going to happen? So let's just get out of the way. So fucking hey, here we go. So I guess we got 15 minutes, and Deborah's she's already got her cards ready. So so I better get to the point because 15 minutes is hard. This is a trail of tears, and I got to describe to you. I mean, how we ever got to this point. I mean, I was blissfully happy down doing strategy down at Special Ops Command, and I'm no special. I know we got a special operator out here. Where's the SEAL? Love you, man. Thanks for your work. This guy's, everyone talks about the invasion of Iraq, initial invasion of Iraq in 2003. Little known line called the Green Line. These guys were off on a very tenuous line up there. Green Beret, SEALs, SAS, our British friends, Australian friends, and a few others arcing around up there, all by themselves, and they did an entire front by themselves. This wasn't part of my speech, but look at them. Those are great Americans. And I'll tell you, I won't tell a story, it'll take too long, take up all my time. Afterwards, come up and ask me about one very special moment that defines Americans in combat doing the right thing. You should be immensely proud of them, so thanks for what you did. To the story. Anyways, I was done doing strategy on Special Ops Command. That's really where I met Patrick. We were just thinking about ideas about how to frame up first ever strategy for Special Ops and all that kind of stuff. And some of the stuff we did down there caught Admiral Mullen's attention. Well, he had this kooky guy named Captain Wayne Porter, absolutely one of the most brilliant guys I've ever met in my life. Has been a made man in the Mullen family for a long time. And Admiral Mullen says, well, go find out who's doing the stuff down in Special Ops. We'll let him and me. And next thing I know, I was just happy down in Tampa. Really happy. Avoided in 28 years in the military, never had to go to the Pentagon. Next thing you know, my fat ass is up in the Pentagon. How did this happen? The task was Admiral Mullen said a whole other story around this, but bottom line, Admiral Mullen said, hey, take a look at grand strategy. So Wayne and I got together on this thing, and we said, well, how hard could it be? So we said, well, it'll take about 2 months to do. How tough could it be? He said, well, let's just be safe. We'll do it for 4 months. So I had temporary orders to go up to the Pentagon for 4 months, and 2 years later, I was still there. That's where I retired from. And when we got there, we sat down and we started thinking, I mean, how do you do strategy? You know, I mean, how are we going to do this grand strategy thing? I mean, I know what the schoolhouse tells us when you go to war college, and well, I'll tell you, it's a bunch of bullshit because it just doesn't work. It was built for a Cold War construct. It doesn't apply to the world we see outside our window today. It's not a 21st century paradigm. It's a 20th century paradigm, and that's where we're trapped. And Wayne and I rapidly recognized that. We started asking stupid questions to ourselves. I mean, how do you frame this thing out? And how were the things that we were talking about? Well, we had this a little bit of an epiphany. We started, of all things, we were talking about quantum physics. I know. It's a dangerous thing for a Marine. I mean, I spent my life picking my nose, and now I'm talking about quantum physics. But we started looking at Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. It's a big, huge analogy. And it really dawned on us that, you know, in Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, you can measure the position of a particle, you can measure the momentum of a particle, but you can't measure both at the same time. You know, and so we kind of looked at it and said, you know what, this is what we do. We, as Americans in the constructs of government, we focus on the position of the particle. We have all this analysis, we have all this structure, we have all this stuff. We focus on the position of the particle. We focus on where we are now. Best case, we focus on where we were. But we never spend a freaking nanosecond looking at where we're going. We spend all our time looking at the position. The position is irrelevant information. It's historical. The best case, it's here and now. But it tells us nothing where we're going. We need to start looking at the momentum of the particle. And that was a big moment for us. And we said, we're just going to shit can everything else that we know. And we're going to have an epistemological moment. We're going to start thinking about things that we don't know. You know, where we're going to be. And that's when we started looking at the world through a different lens. Because then we started saying, okay, well, where are we? Well, right now, we're still, you know, when George Kennan was gacking away the long telegram in 1946 down in the basement of Moscow embassies, you know, he came up with a pretty good idea, this idea of containment. You know, I mean, he may not have called it initially, but it turns into this thing of containment. It's a strategic concept. A strategic concept of containment. It was right for the time and place. George Kennan absolutely brilliant guy. There'll never be another George Kennan, ever. And, well, I hope there is. We need him. But there's the idea of containment as a strategic concept. Well, whether by design or by default doesn't really matter. You know, in 1947 we have this thing called the National Security Act, 1947, that builds a construct to implement a strategic concept of containment. And it seemed to work. It carried us through the Cold War. Now we stubbed our toe a couple times along the way. Korea, kind of a little stub. Vietnam, maybe a bigger stub. But we were always able to get back into the right lane. We were able to get back and focus because we had a central idea. And we all understood the idea. Right or wrong, people had freaking fallout shelters in their backyards. You know? I mean, but people had a visceral sense of who we were as Americans, what we had to do. And that involved some of the stuff that Patrick will talk about. That means suburban sprawl and all that kind of stuff. Well, it was an economic engine. And people got it. They understood where they were going and why they were doing it, what they had to contribute to make it happen. We don't have that today. And when Wayne and I looked at that, we said, you know what? We have gone so far with this concept of containment in a world that we viewed as a closed system. And in the past, you know, in the Cold War, it kind of was a closed system because we didn't have the democratization of information. So it worked. Right or wrong, the state system, whether you're a Soviet or whether you're an American, didn't really matter. The state system had a monopoly over information, and that's just the way it was. You couldn't treat it as a closed system. Well, guess what? We never woke up, smelled the coffee, and recognized in the 21st century it's hopelessly interdependent, and I don't mean hopelessly in a bad way. It's just the way it is. There's nothing you can be able to do about it. You know, it's just the way it is. We are interdependent in a lot of ways, morally, physically, fiscally, ecologically. And we recognize that that's where we have to start approaching the world, not as a closed system, but as an open system. And that was the big epiphany, because now we started talking about a strategic ecology as an open system. We started thinking in ecological terms, in terms of a strategy for the United States. We started thinking in terms of sustainability. We thought it through so much that when you look at the definition of sustainability, the one that we used was it was an organism's ability to remain diverse and productive over time. And that frames out where we have to be as a nation, because our enduring national interest, I don't care, I mean, you could go to anything, no, of course not New American Foundation, but every other think tank in Washington, D.C., they're going to tell you about, you know, there's a vital interest, there's important interest, you know, they have all this horse shit that they throw out. It's pretty simple what we are as human beings. We have to have enduring prosperity, we have to have enduring security, we have to have it over time. And that definition of sustainability, an organism's ability to be productive and diverse over time, that relates directly to our enduring national interest of prosperity and security. diversity, depth, redundancy, resiliency. It's our ability to take a gut punch. And I tell you what, we're going to get a gut punch. We've already zoomed through 380 parts per million. I think we're up around 390. We're heading towards 450. We're going into no man's land. We don't even know where we're going to go. But if you love what went on in Dallas last summer, you're going to love the next 1,000 years. So let's get ready for the ride. I mean, that's just no shit. You're going to have to look at this stuff in wide-eyed. And I don't care whether it's cash or clunkers. I don't care if it's promises of $2 a gallon of gas. That's not addressing the problem. In my opinion, that's nothing more than lobbing loaves of bread up into the Coliseum to play with the mob. That's what we're doing right now because we're afraid to actually look wide-eyed and honestly, with intellectual and emotional honesty, about where we're heading as a nation. And it doesn't mean this isn't a gloom and doom story. This is actually a really good, feel-good story. Trust me, I'll get there. So, but we've got to be honest about where the hell we are. Otherwise, we're never going to be able to get anyplace. So we look at that half of the equation: diversity, diverse organism with depth. There's a reason why I got 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes. Resilience, gut punch. We can do it. All right, but that means we got to toughen up. But then there's also that issue of being productive over time. And if the only way we can define productivity is by consumerism and how much crap we have, me, a card-carrying victim of the consumer club, I mean, I got a lot of crap too. I'm trying to get rid of it, But that's just been what we define as our culture. But we can no longer start defining ourselves based on quantitative production. We have to start talking about qualitative production. Maybe we could take 5 minutes left. Are you sure you're counting right? All right. We have to start thinking about qualitative productivity. I mean, what is it that makes? I mean, we could take a lesson from a small little country called Bhutan that's measuring the gross national happiness. Maybe that's where we need to go because Patrick will start talking about: are people really happy getting stuck in traffic? Are people really happy with what they eat? Are they happy with the environment in which they live? And the answer is probably no. And there's opportunity in that unhappiness because then we can get happy. But the other issue is over time. We have to start thinking in long-term scale. The here and now dynamic of whatever we measure. Well, we measure what we value, but are we really measuring what's really valuable? That's my question. We have to fundamentally question our metrics that we have in life. So what was our proposition? Our proposition was to raise sustainability up to be the national strategic imperative for our nation. And that's how we framed out that strategy. And you can call it as a permission slip to get, maybe we played our military punk card. We said, hey, we can talk about sustainability and not be accused of being a granola eating tree hugger. Because it's actually, last time I checked, a carbon-based organism, we kind of need to have this stuff. Maybe we can keep going. And by the way, it kind of relates to this little small thing called the Constitution, particularly the part, the preamble part, particularly where it says to secure the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity. Well, maybe we ought to start thinking about the posterity half of that equation a little bit more instead of our own sorry little asses, right? Yeah. I mean, if you're a mom and you're a dad, I mean, that's kind of a big event in your life. You start thinking about things other than yourself. Well, why don't we start acting about it? And trust me, I'm apolitical. I will always be apolitical. But it bugs the shit out of me when you hear, hey, I'm the candidate of values, really. Well, how can you be the candidate of values when you fundamentally devalue the future of your children and your grandchildren? Right. That is, I find that morally and ethically disreprehensible and offensive. I don't care what party you're part of because they're on both sides of that fence. I don't care if you're a champion for entitlements. Guess what? Agricultural subsidies is nothing more than socialism dressed up in capitalist clothing. Okay? If you're on the Republican side, and you think the only way that we can produce that energy and food is the way we currently do it, well, guess again. 40 years ago, we did it differently. We can go. It's not about going back in time, but it is going forward in time. Right now, we can't sustain what we're doing. We can no longer afford to have 10 to 14 calories of petroleum energy, get 1 calorie of energy in your body, food energy in your body. It's not sustainable. It's just math. It's science. It's simple. It's freaking common sense. All right? So at the end of the day, what's my message? This is why I get amped up, and I said I wasn't going to start foaming up the mouth, but I kind of am. So Deborah, I'm sorry. Okay, I have a sleeve though. All right, so at the end of the day, what does it mean? And why I'm so glad to be here is it one word: citizen. Right? Citizen. And I get a little bit fired up, a little bit emotional when I talk about the word citizen, because right now we're a nation of residents. We talk about we We've gone the way of Rousseau. If you read the Social Contract, he says, you know that a society is close to just going over the cliff the moment that people start forgetting that public service is part of being a citizen. When they start thinking that they can pay with their purse and consider their obligation to their community complete. While the difference between citizen and resident, it's thousands. It's not even in the same freaking league. It's not in the same league. And we got to get over a resident sense of entitlement and get back to a citizen sense of responsibility. We got to get back to a citizen sense of destiny. That's what America's missing right now. Is what is our trajectory? So we start talking about citizens. Citizens we got stepping up in their own given life. Just today, when they wake up in the morning, are they going to look in and say, how am I going to be? What is my how? How am I going to be? What kind of person am I going to be? How am I going to act? Am I going to be sustainable, or am I just going to keep plugging from the commons? Garrett Hardin had a great essay. 1 minute left still? Thanks, that's a long minute. Garrett Hardin had a great essay in 1968, The Tragedy of the Commons. The whole system will collapse. You know, I'm just going to take a little bit. It's not really going to matter. It's not going to hurt it. Well, it does hurt. It hurts in the aggregate. We're at the point where we're on steroids in the tragedy of commons. And it's time to start taking a look at that. So what's my message to you? SVN. You guys are all citizens. And there's a big reason why I retired from the Marine Corps. One of the bigger reasons. I'm eminently proud to serve. I mean, I am. And I'll always be proud. I'll always be a Marine. You know, once a Marine, always a Marine. But I left the Marine Corps in the government because of my 2 years at the Pentagon. Because I just saw how calcified we are, how wedded to ideologies that we were. Ideology is a false faith.
Right.
Ideology is a false faith. And the only thing ideology is producing right now are divisive ultimatums, and what we need is purposeful participation. Right now we're getting last-minute decisions that are giving us the worst of inevitabilities, and we are no longer getting the best of all possibilities. So it's up to citizens to take charge and shed that false faith of ideology and start figuring out how we're going to fix these big problems that are facing us. So the private sector, the reason I left, because I think the private sector is going to be the change agent for this country. You've got to do this. You're the only ones that have the ability and the agility to shift and change. Where you go, America will follow. It's not going to come from Washington. Washington's language is calcified. It is a staccato. I can predict what people are going to say. What we need is a crescendo that goes above that people will be drawn to. That's why when I wrote the narrative, it wasn't because we had any answers. We just wanted to start a new conversation in America and give a permission slip for people to talk about the real problems that we had and quit the bullshit, quit talking about the bullshit that everyone's become comfortable with. So at the end of the day, it's up to you. It's up to citizens waking up every day and taking them on. And I will, my wrap up right now is, what's an example? Anne-Marie Slaughter, who was running policy over at the State Department, first woman to ever sit in George Kennedy's seat, by the way. We took the narrative over to her early on, we wrote it. And she said, you know what you need? You need pilot projects. And I didn't know what the hell that meant, so we did some stuff in foreign policy, Afghanistan, Haiti, that kind of stuff. That makes sense for a Marine and a sailor to do. But what didn't make sense was this concept of sustainability has a huge component of domestic policy. And that's offsides. So I didn't know what to do, so I went back home to Beaufort, South Carolina, where my family lives, and I said, I'm going to start right there. So I started an organization called Beaufort 2050. We've made a goal to make Beaufort County a model of sustainability by the year 2050. It's called Sea Island 2050 now. Oh, by the way, Beaufort County, one of the most red counties, one of the most red states in the Union. And our representative is Joe Wilson, ULI President Joe Wilson. But I just say that because that's a challenging environment for a concept of sustainability. But we started it there. We made an economic argument out of sustainability, and it worked. And so now we're doing things like smart grids, things like food production distribution systems, those kinds of things. So I don't buy it. We did with zero resource. So I think it's horseshit. We say, well, where am I going to get my funding from? I don't care where you get your funding from. Get off your ass and do something. Thanks again for having it. I'd like to, 15 minutes is not enough to talk about the narrative and all just the design that we're trying to do with this grand strategy, but I will say this. In meeting Patrick Doherty and being involved with New America Foundation, he's got the best strategy map that I've seen. He's got the best idea for taking an idea of sustainability and putting it into, no kidding, real efficacious form for the United States. So I want to pass it over to Patrick.